I'm talking about this. Man, I'm reading through your breakdown here, and it's so concise and it's so smart, and it's better than anything you can find on cable TV. So Viva, the floor is yours. We have your tweet thread up. Can you talk us through this ruling? We are sorely disappointed, but also the reason why we're disappointed, I'll just preface the whole show for you. We've been live for 2 hours. The reason we're disappointed is because we followed this trial, and to us, the non-legal observers, like, this seems like such a simple decision.
Benny, we're frustrated because the decision is wrong, period. It's not wrong because I disagree with it. It's wrong because it's contradicted within the four corners of the decision itself. I should also specify, I'm a former lawyer. If I never see the inside of a courtroom again as a lawyer, it'll be too soon. I'm irritated having followed this and gotten my prediction wrong. I said she was going to get disqualified along with Nathan Wade, and I could twist it and say I'm part right, more right than wrong. She didn't get yeeted in this decision. And I'm not angry because my prediction came out to be wrong. I'm frustrated because the decision itself is illogical, incoherent. I'm going through it, I'm reading it. It's like, okay, he says, we don't really believe her. She's made many mistakes on the stand, many poor decisions, but she hasn't provided, what was it? Inherently unbelievable explanations for having reimbursed the gifts that she acknowledged having gotten. A little frustrated with some typos in there. I couldn't edit the typos out. But it's like the decision says, we don't believe her. She's made a lot of mistakes. Her church speech was legally improper, and yet there's no legal consequences for her as a result of this very same decision. So right. The judge says no actual conflict. I think we can all fundamentally disagree with that. There was an actual conflict. We saw it in real time. But let's say we disagree with that. No actual conflict. The judge says there was an appearance of conflict, but not sufficient to warrant removing her from the file. That she made repeated mistakes, that her demeanor on the stand was, I forget the word in the decision, but he reprimanded it. We know that she lied under oath. It's there for all to see. And yet somehow the judge says, look, I don't want to rock the boat too much. I'll include enough verbiage so that there could be ethics complaints against her, so that maybe if this goes to appeal, based on my finding of facts, an appeal court can say, well, we come to a different conclusion of law. But it's just untenable on the drafting of the decision itself. That's why it's irritating.
So, I mean, yeah, from us sitting there watching, we're sitting there observing Fani Willis' testimony, the testimony of Terrence Bradley, the testimony of Nathan Wade, and we're able to fact check through Secret Service records, through other witnesses, through everyone who knew they were together before he got hired for the money laundering operation to charge Trump. We're able to just put all that together. We don't claim to be particularly like genius level IQs here. We're just alive and we pay attention and we can follow patterns. And they lied. They lied to the court. I mean, are you allowed to just go in and lie to a court? It seems like the judge even says here in your highlights, the judge says that she lied to the court. So is that permissible?
It's obviously not permissible. I don't know if there's still a standing accusation of perjury that she's going to have to deal with. But it's like, this is what you call motivated reasoning. The judge wanted to come to a certain conclusion, give some but not all. I think it's the first time people have said it, but in splitting baby justice, the judge has killed baby justice. Like, yes. You can't split justice like this and then say, well, okay, everybody gets a little bit and push and give and pull. This is a what's the word? It's a desecration of justice. The judge comes out and says her behavior was terrible, legally improper. There's no actual conflict, laughable on its face, because her cash repayment of gifts was not inherently implausible. And then goes on to cite preponderance of the evidence as being the standard in this context. But no, look, whether or not the judge did it to try to preserve the best chances in his re-election or his election campaign now he can win over the Fani supporters because he didn't boot her from the file, but he gave her enough of a judicial spanking in this case that it's fodder for future complaints, for that new legislation that Kemp is putting out. Just pass the buck down the street. The problem is everybody saw this in real time. And having seen it, and anybody who's going to go read the decision, they're going to say this judge knew what he had to do, and for one reason or another, couldn't bring himself to do it. And that's an injustice.
Yeah, so how's that injustice righted? Perhaps you could educate us on why Fani Willis can't be removed through the review of the governor's office and the attorney general. That happened in my city, where multiple Soros prosecutors who weren't prosecuting crimes and who, in fact, were prosecuting against the state, like, we're doing the opposite of what the law says to do. They were just ripped out of office, right? But is there any kind of recourse there?
You should have on a gentleman named Phil Holloway, who's a Georgia attorney. I'm actually going to ping him and ask him what he thinks of this. I would defer to the experts of the jurisdiction at issue, but look, Kemp is floating some legislative amendment that would allow for the removal of office of corrupt DAs. Good. The problem is the judge had the power to do it there. It wouldn't have been the end of the world to say, I'm sorry, whether or not there's an actual conflict, I have come to the factual finding, as he did in his judgment, there's an appearance of conflict. How can you then say you can stay on the file despite an appearance of conflict and legal improper conduct by getting in front of the church, implying that the defendant is the one who's maliciously going after your prosecutor because he's black? I mean, how can you then say, well, there's an appearance of impropriety, legal improper conduct, but you get to stay on to the extent that you fire Nathan Wade and the rest of them? It is, I think it's going to be a laughable decision as an ultimate conclusion, but it's damn damning. It's damn damning is what it is to Fani Willis, because it ratifies everything that everybody saw in the context of that trial.
So everyone saw what was going on, and what we've been seeing now is a screenshot that's ping-pong balling around X that's going quite viral of Judge McAfee donating to Fani Willis. How are you possibly able to preside over a person who you worked for, he worked for Fani Willis, and then donated to Fani Willis in an election that does, on its face, seem like something that shouldn't be allowed?
Well, I mean, look, I didn't downplay that. I sort of contextualize that. It was $150 when the maximum donation is like several thousand. It was at a time when I forget the name of her predecessor, who was even more corrupt than Fani, and everybody wanted him out, so they would support anybody. $150, legal world, everybody works with, under, at some time, at some point or another with other people in the field. I don't think that's the determinant thing here. And if he wanted to be that partial to Fani, he would have said, well, I believe her testimony. Not that it's not manifestly improbable. Oh, I believe her. I don't believe Terrence Bradley. I don't believe Yurdi. What he said basically was, yeah, Yurdi, the woman who said I let her use my condo where they were knocking boots and they had a cell phone record to prove late night visits. He said, yeah, she lacked context, lacked detail. Terrence Bradley, because he was so wishy-washy on the stand, I disregard that. But I don't believe Fani. Like, if he was out to protect Fani, he wouldn't have drafted the decision like that. To me, it's like, give as much as you can to just pass the buck somewhere else because you know what needs to be done. But the $150 3 years ago, I don't put much stock in that. But now people who want to accuse this judge of being compromised, being beholden to Fani, well, they're certainly going to go rely on that as evidence, and you're not going to be able to blame them for doing it.
So you're saying that cowardice is the true crime here?
It's cowardice, it's politics. I'm thinking like there's a little bit of a political angle to this. The outcome might very well be the same, because although he didn't disqualify Fani, he's like, fire your team, fire Nathan Wade, who's already billed close to $1 million. I mean, let's see how that plays over. Well, the money wasn't wasted because he did good work. Yeah, fire the guy that you've invested $1 million in to prosecute this case, or withdraw yourself, while at the same time I've come to the conclusion of legally improper conduct, an appearance of conflict, mistake after mistake of poor judgment, but go along, Fani Willis, and prosecute this case. It's Georgia, it's Fulton County, but if you're in a normal court of justice, who's going to deem this prosecution to be legit after a judge says that about the DA? So he's compromised the case. And I made a joke also that, how long until Fani Willis goes after the judge for election interference? Because issuing this judgment while she's running for re-election, she's corrupt to the core. It's wild.
Yeah, there is a saying, just rip the Band-Aid off, right? Like, it's going to hurt. You might as well just get it over with. Like, there's no point in doing it slowly. Like, it does seem like the Band-Aid is half ripped off here. And now it just is more annoying because everybody knows this is fraudulent. Everybody is aware of what a rigged system this is against Trump. I mean, you have the judge there, there's nobody who watched these trials but said Fani Willis is innocent. Not even Fani Willis could.
No, but it's not that. It's not like you saw the trial and then disagree with the judge's decision. The judge, in his own decision, makes findings of fact that are legally inconsistent with his findings of law, in my humble view. So my only question is, and this I would ask to a Georgia attorney, the findings of fact, legally improper conduct, appearance of conflict, poor decision making. That's a finding of fact. his finding of law was it doesn't warrant disqualification. If they decide to appeal this, they go to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal says, yeah, based on those finding of facts, we are entitled to come to a different finding of law, and we agree that she should be disqualified. I mean, I presume that this is subject to immediate appeal, but I'm not 1,000% certain. I need to verify that. But the bottom line is his findings of fact in the decision cannot support his finding of law not to disqualify Fani Willis within the four corners of that third. How long was that judgment? 20 some odd pages?
28.
Whatever. 28.
Yep.
Within the four corners of that judgment, his findings of fact contradict his findings of law.
So something that you talk about quite a bit on Viva and Barnes, and we just absolutely love the show, and we encourage everyone to go to Locals and follow. Here's the page. We'll put it up again, but like, please go and follow and support the show. It's an amazing show. And also, you look way better with the hair right now. I mean,
I think that was when I ran for office, so I had like a nice skin fade. I was looking clean and proper, but feel better like this.
I know you look. This is a sharper look. I appreciate this Viva look. Both, you're a handsome man. Okay, both look fine. But there, you look like a Guantanamo Bay inmate. Here you look way more rad. So here's my question for you, and it's a little esoteric. It's my final question for you, Viva. You clearly care about this. You care about justice. You care about the rule of law, and you're one of those few people that really like put your shoulder into this institution to preserve its integrity. And that's what seems to be truly at trial here for somebody like me, who's just a passive observer, right? And who's saying, man, there really is no rule of law, actually. There's just rule of politics. There's rule of power. And nobody ever gets indicted. Nothing happens to Hunter Biden. Nothing happens to Joe Biden. Nothing happens to the Clintons. Nothing's happening to Fani Willis. And if Donald Trump puts his chewing gum in the recycle bin, right, there's another 50 charges in New York, right? Donald Trump says if he flies over a blue state, then they'll prosecute him. And it's really starting to form for the American people. And my question is this. How do you fix that? Because you actually have to have rule of law for a country like ours to work. It's really a question of life or death for us. It can't continue like this.
You know, I mean, it's the rule of law. We always used to, coming from Canada, we would always say, oh, America's a very litigious society. Everybody sues. You trip on a doorstep and you sue somebody. The way that you avoid people fighting in the streets is to have them feel that their fights can be resolved by the courts. When they no longer feel that their differences can be resolved within the court system, that's when conflict spills out of the judicial system and into the streets. And you're damn right, I do care about this. I've temporarily or permanently, we'll see what happens, moved from Canada, because you see what happens when systems get compromised, when systems can no longer be relied on to not provide the security, but to not provide the political interference to screw with your daily life. If it goes down in America, if the constitutional republic and this beautiful experiment of America falls, there's nowhere else to go. Like, in as much as nobody's moving to Russia, really. I mean, some people are, but not very many. If America falls and if the system becomes so corrupt that nobody has faith in the most fundamental aspect of a civil and orderly society, there's nowhere else to go. So it is time for people to start waking up. I think the political tide is turning, and this judge's decision is maybe an indication that the political tide is turning. But it is damn good evidence of the corruption of the judicial process, and that some people are untouchable and other people literally, spit your gum out, you'll get accused of toxic hazards. Leticia James can use her election campaign funds as a slush fund to live off of, a lavish life of luxury, trip after trip, but Trump allegedly overvalues a property and a bank doesn't care and a bank doesn't complain and the bank gets repaid in full and they make it into a $450 million judgment. If anyone were to apply the same standard to Leticia James, she'd be bankrupted in jail in a month. So if the system fails in America, there's nowhere else for people to go.
A quick follow-up to that, because I think this is really important. It's something we push, but maybe we shouldn't. And I'm learning a lot, actually, through this interview. Should Republicans fight fire with fire here? Should DAs in Arkansas and Little Rock go after the Clinton Global Initiative, right? Like the biggest criminal slush fund in the world, right? That's a Republican America First DA in Arkansas that oversees that.
So the question is always the metaphorical, metaphysical one. Like, if you become the monster you're trying to slay, you haven't killed the monster, you've just replaced it. That being said, fire with fire when it comes to the law, I say go after the Clinton Foundation, because I know enough to know that there's a lot more indication of fraudulent criminality there than there ever was with We Build the Wall, than there ever was with Trump and anything he did in New York. Trump operated for 40 years in New York, and they only now, when he's running for re-election, discovered all of these alleged crimes. Horse crap. So I'd say fight fire with fire legally, lawfully, but especially when it's warranted. The Clinton Foundation was a pay-to-play, obviously. Why no one ever went after it? I don't know. Did they think they were going to get in the Democrats' good graces? No. Is it a uni-party potential issue there? Possibly. But yeah, when it comes to the law, legal fire with fire, but not the kangaroo court communist persecutions that you see in New York. It's like, don't go after innocent people for the sake of making a political point, but sure as hell hold the political power to account. It's too late for the Clinton Foundation. It withered up as soon as she was no longer in power. What does that tell you? Everything. But it might be time to start, legally speaking, employing the same tools in context where it's warranted. And there's a number of them they could do it.
We cannot encourage you enough, ladies and gentlemen, to follow Viva and to follow his work. It's so sharp, and he does his homework. And there's a typo here or there. Who the hell cares? He really highlights these documents.
Substance over form, Benny, every day of the week.
Exactly right. Substance over form. It's like the difference between the two Vivas on screen right now. And I'm telling you, man, you won't be disappointed. Thank you so much. On Locals, you can find the Viva.
VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. And I'm going live at noon I'm going to go through this decision page by page. And I won't be drinking yet because it's noon, but I'll do a wrap up tonight.
I think we all who've been following this case closely deserve a drink. And if it was Fani Willis bartending, it'd be a Grey Goose. I have a Grey Goose martini.
Oh man,
what have we just lived through?
We're not even through it yet. We're in the thick of it. It's gonna. I don't know if it gets worse before it gets good, but it's very interesting. And what a time to be alive.
Yeah, you're so right. We may well see Fani Willis asking Donald Trump questions. Like it's like what a world we're gonna live. Like here we go. Prepare. It gets worse. It always gets worse. Thank you, Viva.
Thank you very much, Benny. Have a good one.